Again, my name is Jovita Woodrich, and I am the Volunteer Services Director at Volunteer Florida. And welcome to our webinar, Is It Always a Soup Kitchen? And I will explain that title in just a minute. I will have you out of here in 30 minutes. But we're really excited to be able to share this information with you all. We know there are so many of you who are veteran volunteers, people who are new and want to be connected to organizations. You also are just very socially responsible individuals and want to be sure that you are making the wisest use of your time and your talents. So just very, very quickly, wanted to let you know, if you're not familiar with us, Volunteer Florida is the state's lead agency for volunteerism and national service. And we're also the lead agency for volunteers and donations before, during, and after disasters. And we really focus on national service, on fostering volunteerism across the state, which is really kind of the focus for this webinar. And then also on that emergency management piece. We really want to see Floridians who are engaged, our communities transformed, and we know that that will make Florida a better place to live. Many of you are registered already for our volunteer opportunities platform called Volunteer Connect, which is a great way for you to find opportunities in your area. And if you are an organization, we'd love for you to register with Volunteer Connect and post your opportunities. And this is a great way for anybody in the public to find those options that fit your time and your skills and what your passions are. So www.volunteerflorida.org. All right, I just wanted to share this quote before we kind of get into the meat of what we will be discussing today. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I really love this, and we have seen this, especially over the last year, but constantly we see this every day, pandemic or not. People are devoting time and energy to missions all over the country, and especially here in Florida. Whether it's education or arts and culture, human services, just animals. There's so many ways that people are serving and giving and really have this attitude that they are not just themselves or their family, but that their ability to serve and care for their community is critical. It's a privilege. It's civic engagement. It's a right that we have in our society. So just wanted to encourage you all with that. So if you're going to think about volunteering, I think there are a number of organizations that immediately come to mind. And they are, I think you can probably guess some of these that I'm going to share. But we've got our United Ways all across the country, all across Florida, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Red Cross, Feeding America. These are some of our real staple, really powerful organizations that do great work and serve so many Floridians. And we do not ever want to minimize their work. They need volunteers to be mobilized, to carry out, to be their hands and feet to achieve their mission. But this is kind of where the name comes from, is that we have these typical ways of thinking about volunteering. And it's that soup kitchen. It's that housing facility for people experiencing homelessness. Something that you do on a Saturday afternoon for a few hours. And what we want to encourage people in through Volunteer Connect and through the work that we do is that there are so many ways to volunteer virtually with all kinds of different types of opportunities. You can be someone who leads tours at a museum, somebody who helps in the parks that we have. We have an incredible park system. You could be somebody who walks dogs in an animal shelter. There's so many ways to serve, virtual opportunities from the comfort of your home. So beyond a lot of what we typically think about volunteering, we want to encourage people to really think outside of the box in terms of the ways that they can volunteer. So here's an example. This is United Way of Suncoast, the Suncoast, and this is the Tampa area. But this is something that popped up during the pandemic. Would you like to share a hobby with a preschooler? We have the opportunity for you to make items for a classroom, and they were creating and continue to a video sharing a library, a virtual library for these preschoolers. You know, and you can see there some of the great ideas that they had. You know, if you want to read a story, you know, I have a 3-year-old and she loves corduroy, which many of you are probably familiar with, but just reading that on video, just from your iPhone and sending that in is an example of something that people may not think about. And then here's another example. This is a virtual opportunity as well, careervillage.org. They have professional individuals who come on to the website, and they have students who have questions. And you just have an opportunity to answer those questions. People may not think of that as volunteering, but it is. So this individual, this is just from recently, said, with homework, is it a good idea to do it right away or to give myself some relaxation time? Great question from a high schooler. And so this is a very easy way for you to connect. You are serving your community, but it doesn't look the way that we typically think. So just wanted to emphasize, most people kind of see volunteering as nice but unnecessary, but it really is such a critical way that we're able to keep our community strong. It is compelling, it is indispensable, it's invaluable. Here are a couple of quick things that you can see. $8.2 billion of economic impact reported in 2018 for Florida, for those of you who are volunteering. It's associated with 27% higher odds of employment, and there are tons of physical and mental benefits. It strengthens our social connections, builds strong, safe, cohesive communities, and enhances civic engagement, delivers public goods and services. It's mutually beneficial. And another quick quote, doing more than you have to because you want to in a cause you consider good. So volunteers bring tremendous value to organizations. And I just want you to see this. You enhance services. You become strong groups of supporters. You bring your connections to the organization. You offer specialized skills. You increase the diversity of the organization, the perspectives of the organization. You bring new energy and ideas, and you give more of your time off than that's expected, and many of you even become donors. So just know how powerful your impact is. So the first thing that I hope you all will think about is to consider volunteering, consider your opportunities in the bigger picture. So what's your why? Most volunteers volunteer because they were asked. That's something that most people probably don't realize. And maybe they were asked more than once, but they finally decide, yes, this is something I'm going to do. Was it because you were asked? Do you care deeply about a particular issue that an organization addresses or social change? Maybe you have personal experience with an organization that has affected you. Are you motivated by your worldview? Maybe it's religious or philosophical, but that could be what part of your why. So these are some things to consider about why you want to volunteer. You know, something that people may feel a little bit embarrassed about, but you are looking for external recognition or a good feeling. There is nothing wrong with that. So if this is just if this is part of developing skills or growing as an individual and you appreciate that, go for it. Paying back society for the opportunities that were extended to you or others, or you have untapped skills and you want to be able to use them. So thinking about your why, what is it that is motivating you to volunteer is the first thing that I want you all to think about and to consider, as I mentioned before. You can really get specific with that too. You know, is it that you really want to empower staff members of an organization? You want them to be encouraged. You want to be able to brainstorm new ideas with them, as I mentioned before, as a why. You want to be able, again, specifically to use a skill set to achieve this particular mission because you see this issue in the world. So many things that we have need great expertise on, that we need maybe that brain power for, or maybe we need, physical service for. So all of those things, thinking about kind of that root reason, I think is very important and worth considering. And so then preparing is important as well. And this is how much time can you realistically give. A lot of times we get very excited about volunteer opportunities and consider being able to, whether or not you're really able to meet that commitment, because these organizations are relying on you. Although you are not staff members, it's critical for them to know whether or not you will be able to participate in the activities that you say that you will. Days of the week, time that you may be able to be available. And if it's not consistent, that's okay. Just say so. I'm not sure week to week when I'll be able to do something. That's when virtual opportunities are great, or opportunities that don't require specific shifts. And that's okay, as I mentioned. What are you not willing to do? It's okay to be honest about that as well. It's not employment, but being honest up front. Maybe you see an opportunity and there's parts of it that you really don't feel comfortable with or don't want to do. Just make sure you say that. Make sure that the volunteer coordinator knows what you're willing to do and not do. And what do you hope to gain from the experience? Honestly, there are people who do, let's say they're doing sorting and packing for a food distribution program at an organization. It may be that you want to be the hands and feet, again, that physical work, but you know what? You have an exhausting job during the day, and you aren't necessarily interested in, doing something that involves kind of a lot of that mental brain power. You just want to be able to kind of zone out, but also be doing hard work that is tangible and really powerful. That's great. It may not be that what you want to gain necessarily is something that you think is super lofty or overly involved. That's really okay as well. So again, these are some things to think about. And then another component of this is doing your homework, all right? And this is the part that I think is extremely important as well. So there are lots of types of nonprofits. That word is used frequently, and it can mean a lot of different things. So your most restrictive type of nonprofit is a 501c3. So keep that little that designation in mind, and we'll go into it in a second. But when you're looking at organizations, volunteering, you really want to make sure you know whether or not they are a nonprofit, if it's a for-profit corporation, if it's the government. Lots of government entities have volunteer programs. So keep that in mind, the type of organization that is offering the opportunity. So one of the big things, too, is looking at their mission. What is it that their goal, the primary goal, what is it that they want to achieve? What is their existence surrounding? And you can find that very easily on anyone's website, often on their Facebook page. But that tells you something overall. So, maybe you are doing administrative work. You are very organized and you want to be able to help an organization with filing, let's say, and Excel spreadsheets. Well, first of all, that may not be appealing to one person, but if you think about it, let's say there's a bigger picture mission that you're really passionate about. It's an arts museum, and let's say that a staff member is going into a filing cabinet to look for something. We all know how frustrating it is when we can't find what we need. So think about how even something like basic efficiency and effectiveness in an office, whether it's filing or, again, entering names into a spreadsheet, getting the email addresses correct for donors, it could be any number of things, but that all contributes to the mission of the organization, no matter how small that volunteer opportunity may seem or how insignificant. All of those things are ways that mission is achieved. So looking at that, the goals of the organization, those are really important ways for you to know what the outcome ultimately is of the work that they're doing. And that connects with that success and impact component. You should be able to see this on websites. If it's a nonprofit, especially a 501c3, they have annual reports. And that typically is something that's very, very much in the front, very much something that on social media, on their websites, they are touting what successes they have, the impacts they've had in the community. Now, as I mentioned before, you may not be the person on the ground that doing that work. It might be the employees who are, but you also may be doing some of that direct service work where you're really on the front lines working in the environment that where the most impact is happening, but you may not. Knowing what that bigger picture impact is helps to encourage you in whatever the work is that you are doing with the organization. And so, as I mentioned before, keeping in mind these types of organizations. So the state, Florida State Parks, those are under the state through the Department of Environmental Protection. Our Parks and Rec programs in all of our counties, a lot of other types of volunteering opportunities are through our local and state governments. So being aware of that. And then this 501c3 status. So with nonprofits, there are 501c, I think 3 through 9 or something like that. And the 501c3s are the ones that are kind of have the most burden of proof for the IRS. And I know it's kind of boring, but just so you know, that means they're very restricted on legislative activities and also lobbying activities. So they really have to be focused on the mission of their organization. And all nonprofits, they can make revenue. So there are a lot of times where people may see that an organization has, for example, a thrift store that's like a business, for example, connected to their organization. This is a goodwill. A lot of nonprofits are doing this type of thing. Well, that money, yes, they are generating what we would consider profit, but really that's revenue, and it's just required to go back into the organization. That's all that means. So they can certainly raise funds just like they would with a walk, for whatever the cause is, or a big gala or a big, dinner event with a speaker. The same thing, that those dollars that are raised go back into operations. So that's a helpful thing, I think, for a lot of people to know when they're looking at the business model or the type of organization it is. And you can look up 501c3 or look up the meaning of nonprofit and find that information out as well. So one thing to look at is their finances. Is that something that you want to find out more details on? A quick component of this is a lot of times people look at what's called overhead, what they're spending on administration. Just keep in mind that it does take a lot to administer an organization, whether it's the senior management, other individuals who are managing grants and so on. So, the operating costs that are specific to achieving the mission, administrative and overhead costs are also important. So just looking at those numbers doesn't always give you the big picture. So that's something to think about. Those annual reports, you can typically get financial statements if you want. Those annual reports usually give you some general information. You can always look at, kind of what's been said online, what kind of articles have been written about the organization, and so on, kind of that convenient sample of information. So again, none of these are necessary, but they are good ways, a little bit of a framework for you as you think about service. And then what are their viewpoints? You can catch and glean this from newsletters, from social media, whether it's maybe they have some political viewpoints. They may not be participating in political activities, but, looking at those viewpoints or those things that you agree with, it may not be political. It could be their theory or their model for how they want to serve people. Maybe it's something you don't agree with. So keeping that in mind is important on the front end. Just want you to keep in mind that organizations vet volunteers. So there are times when organizations they really need people, and they are willing to kind of let anyone in. You see this a lot of times during emergencies. They have affiliated volunteers who are already prepared and trained, but then they also need people to make food, help with food sorting and packaging, or they need people to, build flood buckets or things like that. But typically, organizations are going to have applications. Some of them are going to have background checks. So, we often have a consumer mindset, and the mindset, well, they need me because I'm a volunteer and they should treat me perfectly and sort of wait on me hand and foot. And don't they want my help? Is not ideal. It is a partnership. It's a mutually beneficial relationship, and they have liability and things that they have got to consider as they make choices about volunteers as well. So last couple of things, thinking about whether or not you can really commit, what's actually needed. If it's virtual, do you have a reliable computer? Do you have reliable internet? Things like that. It may seem small. If it's something that's going to be outside or a lot of, intense work even inside, do you have the clothing? Do you have the shoes? Things like that. So you want to be able to ask those questions or see. You're going to hear about policies and procedures during orientation. You'll probably get a volunteer handbook. You want to be aware of those. There are all kinds of policies, and I know it's hard sometimes to go through them, but it is important to know what the expectations are, and you're going to get that during orientation after you've made that decision or you're close to making that decision. And then engage. This is when you get that, you get the call, you have the shift and so on. To go participate, or you get to go in when works for you to serve. Perfection, not possible with human beings. So just keep that in mind with the individuals you're working with, the staff members, just like our friends and family or our other coworkers. You never know what people are coming in to in their job or volunteers. It doesn't mean that you don't speak up if you're frustrated or have problems. But again, it's a mutually beneficial relationship, not just one where the organization is pleading and desperate for volunteers and willing to kind of jump and you say how high. Although, sometimes there is that perspective, but, typically the focus is on this mutually beneficial relationship and knowing that these are human beings trying their best to work hard for their community, make sure that their mission is achieved, which serves the people around them, serves your neighbors. Just keeping that in mind and giving people a little bit of grace. Of course, again, communication and honesty. So if there are things that are really bothering you or that you're really concerned about, share those things. That's really, okay and important. Make sure you know who to go to, and if you're not comfortable with that person, go to someone else and let them know. So certainly, again, we don't expect perfection. We want to give people grace, but then we certainly want to speak up if there's something that we're very concerned about. And you're off. After that, consider, prepare, and engage, all of those kind of considerations. It's time for you to enjoy your service experience. And if you're having a good experience, please share it with other people. Again, word of mouth is so powerful, and then that being asked in terms of why people volunteer. So invite people to also be a part of the great work that you're doing with a particular organization in your community. Tell them about the importance and the benefits of volunteering and, what it does for organizations. Volunteers are not just ancillary people that organizations, want to just keep busy. You really are contributing to that mission and to the success and impact that that particular organization can have. So again, this is that quote that I mentioned before. I'm of the opinion that my life belongs to the community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. Hope you all will browse Volunteer Connect for opportunities. If you're an organization, that you will register for Volunteer Connect and go ahead and post your opportunities. If any of you have any questions, and again, to connect to Volunteer Connect, you'll go to volunteerflorida.org, but please email me, volunteer@volunteerflorida.org. We'd love to chat with you, have any questions about what I've shared, about the resources that Volunteer Florida has as the state fleet agency for national service and volunteerism. Would love to answer your questions, brainstorm with you. We have so many resources and ways that we do our best to support Florida's individual organizations that are serving you all. So I just want to thank you for your time today. This is going to be recorded and then posted under resources, which is under volunteer services on our website, again, volunteerflorida.org. And I hope you all go out and continue to serve or start serving, whether it's virtually or in person. I appreciate your time this morning, and I hope you all have a great rest of the week.